Today's video is going to be about how I saved enough money for a 20% down payment on this house in a matter of about 3 years. I went from having student loan debts about $8,000 worth to, just to be completely transparent, I had about $55,000 saved in 3 years for my down payment for this house. And this is the kind of video that I wished was around when I started this journey. I'm gonna be as realistic as I can and as transparent as I can with numbers. I don't have all my bank statements from 3 years ago, so I'm going to try to guess from my memory as accurately as possible. But where I can, I'll provide like screenshots and whatnot. Hey! Stop! If you enjoyed this video, I would suggest subscribing. You don't have to, but I get into a lot of things here on this channel. I have a lot of hobbies and interests like sewing, painting. I will be vlogging house renovation projects on this house, so if you enjoy that kind of content, then I would suggest subscribing and follow me along on my journey. So to get started, I'm just going to speak frankly about some of my opinions that I held during this journey. Some people may not agree with it. That's okay. We each have to be realistic about how we spend money and what's important to us on a monthly basis. So when I was first starting my journey saving this money for this house and paying off my debts, I started listening to a lot of Dave Ramsey. I don't like everything he has to say, just to be clear, but he does have some good pointers. I really focused on his, I forget the amount of steps he has, like that whatever 9-step plan. I used some of those concepts. However, I don't agree with his approach and his mentality towards credit and credit cards. I think credit cards can be a very useful tool for saving money if you're diligent and you're responsible with it. And I'll get into how I used my credit card here in a little bit, but that's something I wanted to say first. I know he's not everybody's favorite. I did adopt some of his principles, but not everything. Secondly, I had to be very strict about how I spent my money, which I know sounds duh. But I had to set aside some of my desires and urges and fear of missing out kind of thing. I had to really ask myself when I was about to buy something, do I really need this, or do I want this to go towards my savings? I'm a homebody. I really enjoy staying at home for the most part. I don't really like going out all that much and spending a bunch of money on drinks and movies and stuff. That's never been me. So I found it was easier for me to save money because I just didn't do those things a whole lot. But we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about how you can fit those things into your budget if that's just how you are and that's what you need. But that wasn't an important thing to me, nor was like shopping for clothes. I just had to tell myself, like, you're going to have to, what's the term? There's a phrase for this, delay the gratification. That's what I'm looking for. I had to delay some gratification in these 3 years, I'm not gonna lie. There were a lot of times I wanted to spend my money and I couldn't. Those are rules I set for myself. You don't have to be that strict. You can save at a slower rate. I chose to be pretty aggressive about it. Also, to be transparent, I have had a long-term boyfriend. He's my husband now, but he did help with expenses as well. That's just something that I want to be transparent about. I guess I should also be transparent about my salary. I was broke before this started. I don't think I ever made more than like $35,000 a year, and I don't need to convince everybody how little that is in today's economy to be able to survive on. In 2018, at the end of grad school, I was in $8,000 of debt. I think it was technically like $7,500. So 2018 comes along, I get this new job, I'm making $60,000 a year, and my first point of attack was that debt first, and that's one of Dave Ramsey's principles. You're not going to spend any money on anything till you get your debt gone. So I made the choice to not buy a new car. I've had a 2001 Toyota Camry with like 225,000 miles on it. It's beat up, it's rusty, but I delayed the gratification of getting a new, nicer car. Do I want one? Of course. However, I want to pay off my debt and I want a house more. So I delayed the gratification of getting a car. So we're not even going to be, for me, not even going to be touching car payments. I've never had a car payment since, well, I've never had a car payment. I've always bought a used car. That was quite a shock to me to all of a sudden be making that much money. Because like I said, I was just used to always struggling and like never being able to save anything. Also, lastly, before I get into this, I am going to be presenting a budget for somebody who has static recurring checks. It's predictable what you're bringing in every month. I know that some people, when you're working like an hourly type job, these kind of videos don't apply to you. They may not be helpful, but maybe you can take some pointers from them and adopt them to your income, even if it is variable. However, my income during this journey was very static. It was predictable. I knew my check was the same every 2 weeks, so I knew exactly what was coming in. Okay, I think I've said everything I need to say. First things first, I really, really, really recommend an app called, let me look at it. It is called Spending Tracker. I don't think it's a very popular app. However, I was looking for something that you could track your income and your expenses, and you could really customize it to what you need. And this was the only thing I found that suited my needs. So I'm gonna put up a little screen recording somewhere on the screen of how this app works while I talk you through it. When you download the app, you have to set up, well, what I did was I set up first those recurring expenses that I knew would happen every single month. For me, they were things like rent. That's the exact same every month. Medical bills, like prescriptions, renter's insurance, internet, some others I can't think of. Those expenses that are the exact same every month, you can actually, in this app, you can configure it to, at the start of every month, it will just automatically put those expenses in your balance. So one of the second things I did was I had a savings goal. This is very aggressive, I know. I had a savings goal of 50% of every check I would put away into savings. As far as this app, that was another one of those recurring expenses that I did at the start of every month. But I would configure that in the app as well. I think it was like $750 or something like that. That doesn't sound right. I don't remember the dollar amount. I think it was at least $1,000. So at the start of every month, $1,000 would be accounted for savings right away. Once I had the app configured to have all those recurring expenses, you also can configure in the app to have your recurring income. So you would also, and I'll put it on the screen here, you also configure, so for me, I can't remember the dollar amount back then in 2018, but whatever I was bringing in per month, so 2 checks, I put that as a recurring income. And that, again, on this app is one of those things I don't have to think about. It's just allocated for in my monthly balance of income versus expenses. So once you have those recurring things figured out, and I really highly suggest, because sometimes you forget about those little subscriptions you have, like Hulu and Netflix, Stitch Fix, you just forget about them. I would highly suggest sitting with your computer and your bank account, going through the past few months of transactions. Check your PayPal too, sometimes things get in there, Venmo, whatever it be. Check on those subscriptions, because there's gonna be some you forget about, Adobe, Photoshop, and Lightroom. So once I had that figured out, I know some people, when they approach budgeting, they like to have buckets per category of what they're gonna spend. So they're gonna have $250 for groceries, $50 for shopping. Personally, I couldn't do that. It was too much to manage. It was too much to think about. So every time I brought up my credit card at a store, I'm thinking, wait, how much do I have left for this bucket? And you take trips to Target and you're buying a shirt for fun, but you're also buying groceries that you need. Like it didn't work for me. So my approach to budgeting was, the priorities at the start of every month are those recurring expenses and the recurring income. Whatever net is left over, hopefully it's not negative, whatever net is left over, spend it however you want. If you've done your rent, your utilities and whatnot, and those savings. Don't forget the savings. That's priority. Whatever's left, spend it however you want. So I think I had like $500 after all that was said and done for every month to just do whatever I wanted. Did I want to buy $200 pair of jeans? If I could justify $300 left for the end of the month, cool, I could do that. I wouldn't do that, but that's just an example. So that's how I approached budgeting. I found it was very flexible, but it also allowed me to be diligent where I needed to be. So what I did with this app was anytime I spent money or anytime I made money, if I sold something on Facebook, I would either put it as an expense or an income right away. I just made it a habit. Right when I go out to eat for dinner, bam, take out the app. What did you spend? Make a note of what it was, put it in there. And I was just really diligent about that. That's what I did. I was very, very diligent about anytime I spent a penny, pull out the app, log it. I credit my being able to do this with knowing exactly where every penny of mine was going, whether it was coming in or out. I knew what was happening and I was on top of it. It kind of scares me, honestly, sometimes. Like, I'll talk to my parents about money, and I saw the same, like one time I went to my parents' house and I saw the same magazine subscription. In the week I was staying there, it got mailed there 3 times. And I asked my mom, like, do you know that you have 3 subscriptions for this? She had no idea. The other thing I like about the app is you can create custom categories. I'll show you that if I haven't already on a little screen grab. You can create custom categories. You can also export your data at the end of the month in a CSV file. I loved this because I'm an analyst for work, so I love tracking and trending numbers. I love spreadsheets. So at the end of every month, I would take that CSV report and I would paste that data into a spreadsheet I had where I would just paste it and like a graph would show what happened for that month. And if I was like really high in groceries, I could make a mental note of like, you really spent a lot on groceries, maybe take it back a notch. But also, because I'm not strict about those buckets and those categories, it's also like, well, so what if you spent a lot on groceries? Did you save? Cool. Did you pay your expenses you have to? Cool. Spend what you want on groceries. That's how I approached it. So about the credit card, I mentioned how I use that as a tool, so I want to talk about what I did there. Some people don't want to use a credit card. They're a little weary of it. Totally fine. However, I saw it as a tool for saving even more money because a lot of credit cards have something called cashback rewards. And what happens is if you use the card for your purchases, depending on what kind of purchase it is, you get a cashback reward. And this is an incentive to get you to use the card more in hopes that you won't pay it off. What I do personally is I literally use my credit card for every single expense. And I just make sure to pay it on time. Like I have reminders in my calendars and whatnot, and I'm so on top of my money anyway so that I see when it needs to be paid off. And I can't remember the exact rates for my card, but I think gasoline purchases was like 3%, groceries was 2%, and then everything else was 1%, something like that. But literally what happens is at the end of the month, you've spent whatever with your credit card, and it calculates all those categories and it spits $30 back into your bank account, and you didn't have to do anything to get that money. You just spent money you would have otherwise. That's how I use credit as a tool. I genuinely don't understand why Dave Ramsey is so against credit cards. Like I said, I think they can be a valuable tool. Also, just being honest, you need credit history to get a house. I was able to get a very good interest rate on this house because of my credit history. And actually my lender, my financial lender, said I was one of the best cases for a client that he's seen in a year or two. That's how financially secure I was going into this house purchase. So yeah, that's how I use credit cards as a tool. Again, not everybody's cup of tea, but that's what I did. The next thing I want to talk about is investments. Every year, the dollar inflates in value by 3%. I think that's correct. A dollar in 2018 would only be worth 97 cents in 2019. I hope that math is right. So, why am I bringing this up? If you have your money just sitting in a checking account and it's growing, and you think, oh, I'm saving a lot, I'm doing a good job. You could be doing better. Let me tell you why. That example I gave with the dollar to 97 cents, apply that to 10 grand. So what's the purchasing power of 10 grand in the next year? I think it's 9,700, if I'm doing that right. What can you do to prevent your money from losing purchasing power? You can either put it in a savings account or you can invest it. Just to be frank, I never bothered with savings accounts because the rates these days are abysmal. I think the interest rate is like 0.0, I can't remember. It was ridiculous. It was just not worth it to have your money sitting in a savings account with the bank and they give you nothing in return for it. So what I chose to do, and this was very risky, what I chose to do was I invested very aggressively. I invested with Vanguard, and I can't remember the guy's name, but I watched this video from a fellow YouTuber. His name is Graham, I can't remember. He's a real estate mogul. And he made a video talking about 2 index funds with Vanguard, I think it was Vanguard, 2 index funds that he invests in. And he's like, just pick these 2 at these percentages, you'll make some money back. And he was right. This was risky, I'm putting that out there. Not all of my money I had saved, but a large chunk of it, I invested with Vanguard, and I'll try to put the names of those 2 index funds, but this makes me feel really bad. I feel really about this because I literally profited off of a pandemic. I feel awful about it. But that's how I made a lot of money to pay on the down payment of this house. I think I put $16,000 in those Vanguard interest funds in March of 2020. And if you recall, that's when the stock market tanked. And I remember doing that and thinking like, this feels really I don't know about this. But I knew eventually the market would recover. If you do some research about, like the 2008 economic crisis, the depression, the Great Depression, I mean, the stock market always recovered. So my logic was, this is going to recover. Maybe not now. I'm just going to see what happens. And it very much paid off. Some of that money is still sitting in there now, actually, and I basically my interest rate on that investment was 30% in 1 year. Which, if you do the math on 16,000, that's quite a bit. That's what I did. Just, again, I'm being transparent. And I used a large portion of that to put on the down payment for this house. I'm saying this and I'm realizing how crazy it is. Because like I said, prior to 2018, when I started this job, I was broke. Like, the concept of saving money did not apply to me. I was okay about saving like $100 a month. I did what I could, but I just can't believe I'm sitting in this house right now, honestly. Sorry, my cat. Come here. Come here. And Turkey's been with me all the way from my broke days to now. And I'm trying to treat this as being, like, I'm being careful of getting cocky. I'll put it that way. I have this very strong fear of becoming homeless. And I talk to people about it, and they always tell me, like, why do you think you're gonna be homeless? That could never happen to you. And all I can think about that is, well, I'm sure a lot of people who are homeless never thought they'd be homeless. Like, it can happen to anybody. Things happen. And so I'm trying not to be too cocky. I'm in a very good financial situation now, but I'm trying to set myself up for success to basically never be broke again. I still have a lot of money in investments for Vanguard. Now that I put the down payment on the house, though, I have to re-establish my 6 months and my emergency fund. I'm thinking about taking some of the money out of the investments to do that, but it's just performing so well that I can't justify it right now. Yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say. That's how I approached my budget, and just using that simple method with that app of configuring your expenses and your income to just auto-populate. And anytime I spent a penny, I logged it in that app because it will show you your balance. It will do all the math for you. And like, if you're in the 5th of the month and you've spent $52 at such and such, it'll do all that math and be like, you're projected by the end of the month to be at a net of $200 left over. That's an extra $200 you can put in your savings. So it was kind of like a competition with myself. I would just look at the app every day, see where I was, and be like, well, if I don't buy this, I can make this much extra in savings and blah, blah, blah. So that's what I did. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm trying to be cognizant of how some of these techniques won't be applicable to everybody. I'm in a very privileged situation right now. I get that. But also, I do want to try to be helpful where I can and use some tips that I think could apply for people. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hello, it's me in Editing World here. I wanted to walk you through some real life examples of mine, some real numbers, as promised. This first picture here is a real example I took of 1 month of my expenses. I just picked a month at random. And what you see in the green here is my income. This is net income, not gross. And I also have an Etsy shop, so I'm making some passive income there. It's not that much. This was not the greatest month. In the light blue, we have those static recurring expenses I was talking about. So they're the same every single month. So I had a gym membership. It was always $48.71. I had a coffee subscription. Yes, I had coffee mailed to my house because I love it. Rent, phone, rent insurance, and savings. And on the right side, the darker blue, that was the total rent. So I put in the lighter blue my half because I split the cost of this with my husband, which admittedly really helped me save a bunch of money over the years. I understand I'm in a pretty lucky position here. But again, I promised I'd be transparent with numbers, so here they are. In the red are my variable, what I call whatever you want expenses. So we talked about how you have the green, you have your income configured in the app. The blue, it's the same, you have it configured in the app. And then whatever you have left over at the end of doing all those expenses and income, you just spend it however you want. I don't do the categories or the envelopes or buckets for each category. I don't do that. So the red was just what I ended up spending however I wanted. You can see I spend a lot on food. That's where I like to choose to spend most of my money. I like to cook a lot and I like to go out to eat. Last thing I wanted to mention, the apartment I was renting at this time, it had a bunch of utilities included in the rent. So this total of $1325.77, that included water, trash, pest control, technology, so like the internet was in there as well. So it was a pretty good deal for everything. The only utility I had to worry about paying on my own was the electric, and that's down here at the bottom. So this is a breakdown of an example month of mine. So this chart we're looking at here, these are real numbers I pulled of my savings over time. It's a combined number between my checking and my savings account with my bank, even though my savings account really didn't have like the greatest interest rate, but I just included it in here because it's part of my total package. So at the start of this, I started my job in July of 2018. This is not showing anything about my student loan debt. So at the start of this graph, I am actually technically in the negative, but it's not part of this graph. This is just what was in my bank account. So started around, I think it was like 8,000. Got a little higher. I got to a comfortable point around, I think that's March of 2019, where the red arrow is. Yeah, March. and you see it drop, that's when I paid off my student loan debts. So I saved enough over the course of July 2018 to the red arrow, saved enough to feel comfortable paying my student loan debt. I paid that off. So it drops there. And in this little highlighted yellow region, this box, that's when I started putting more and more money towards investments in Vanguard rather than just saving it in one spot. At the black arrow, that is where I got a promotion with my job. I made a significant amount of more money every year, so you can see my progress really jump at that point. I lived like I was still at my $60,000 salary, and I just saved even more. So I was saving thousands every month. And I was just being really diligent about my expenses and keeping an eye on things. And I bought my house in July. That's not correct. In August of this year, of 2021. So this doesn't look like this now because I put a lot of this towards the house, but who's to say I can't do this again, you know? This last chart here, this is a snapshot from my Vanguard account. So these are my investments. So if you recall in that previous chart, in that highlighted yellow region, that was when I started putting money towards this effort here. So I really panicked around this inverted red triangle. That, I think I had around $5,000 in here at this point, and then COVID happened, and that's what you're looking at the red triangle. And I really panicked because I actually lost money at this point. I was in a negative balance, as you can see. I think it was negative 2,000 around there, and I really panicked. But I knew the market would recover because historically and according to research, it always does. So I did not touch my money. I left it there. And in fact, I put more in there. I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but basically by May 2020, I had about 16. That's not correct. I can't remember the exact dollar amount. But you can see where it says purchases and withdrawals. I've put of my own money about $16,500 in here. But where it says ending balance, so today it's evaluated at that figure. And that was just over the course of a year and a half. You can see my rate of return is really good. You would not see this in any savings account at any bank. So I just wanted to show real numbers. And if you have any questions, leave a comment and I'll get to you. Thanks for watching. Bye.